No, I would get so sidetracked. I'm already going to get so sidetracked. But anyway, so awesome. I'm so glad I get to speak. I got to speak like when I first came here. That was funny. The week that I'm supposed to speak, John speaks. And do you ever remember like when I first spoke, like what I spoke about? Me like almost dying in a water. Yeah, right. And then John comes up and talks. And John's like, we're talking about rafting. And I'm like, dude, no way. So if you need Jesus, go rafting because he'll show himself to you there. Either you're going to learn through like nature and stuff, or you're going to almost die and then be like almost meet him. And so it's a really good bonding time. So yeah. Alrighty. I'm a notes guy. Steve isn't very much in notes. I have to have notes or I will go from talking about Jesus to the Falcons to being upset to something else. So one thing I was trying to think of what I want to talk about, and the teens, I cover specific topics, you know what I mean? And I try to cover things that's going to be like relevant in their lives and things that, lately I've been talking about things that nobody else really talks about, you know what I mean? What do we talk about Monday? Jesus. No, we didn't. They're kind of listening, it's okay. Yeah, John, Jesus. So when deciding what to talk about tonight, the thing that stuck out to me most was worship. And I kind of was thinking about it, and I was like, I haven't spoke to y'all. You hear me worship, and I kind of get little snippets to talk to you here and there, but I haven't got to share, like, where I come from with worship, what my background is, what I believe in it. And tonight, what I really want to do is, it's something I do with them a lot, and I want you to have kind of a different idea of it. So first, I'm going to list, here's tonight's schedule. I'm going to let you know, like, how I came about being a worship leader. And then some things that I've kind of learned along the way. So yeah, cool. So it's story time with Uncle Kael. So I'm going to start back from day one. No, just kidding. Let's see. I have notes written down for this, but it's like, how do you really do that? Y'all have heard this story 2 million times, so you're going to hear it 2,000,001. So a long time ago, I lived in Duluth, Georgia at the time. My parents were together, awesome house, everything was awesome. Get everything I wanted, it was cool. Played baseball, basketball, football. Like one time I played all three of them in like the same season, and it was awesome. But like all of a sudden, all that came to a screeching halt. My parents got divorced like out of nowhere, and I was like, okay. So my family, minus my dad, pick up, and we go to Gilmer, Georgia. Anybody know where Gilmer is? Exactly. Yes, north. There's nothing out there. If you're from Gilmer, I'm sorry, but you agree with me. I know you do. There's nothing in Gilmer. So, like I said, the only thing that like I was passionate about at the time as a 12, 13-year-old was sports. That was it. And I always had this like, oh, it'd be cool to play guitar, you know what I mean? Like secretly I'd go in my room and like close the door and listen to Kids Bop on my CD player, and get my baseball bat and like jam out. That was me. So I moved to Gilmer County. And the last thing I wanted to do was play sports because like that's what me and my dad had, right? And he was gone, so it was like, I don't do that. So I think it's funny, I was thinking earlier, I think he actually got me my first guitar that like I actually learned how to play on. And so if you want to learn how to play an instrument, go spend like 2 years in the middle of nowhere and you'll teach yourself to play. If anybody knows my cousin Josh, he taught me like 3 chords and then taught myself from there. Anybody know the song Broken Heartsville? That song, that was the first song I learned. Thought about playing it. No, I'm just kidding. Tonight, but thought that would be good. So yeah, that happened. I kept practicing, and I was just like, oh, it's cool to play. And the only person I would sing, singing was not a thing. I was like, no, that ain't happening in front of people. So I was singing for my mom. My mom, of course, was. If my mom ever comes, you'll see a lady like right here with the phone, like trying to go to people. That's my mom. Nothing's changed. She records me every time, and I'm like, put the phone away. But that's the only person I'd sing to. I was really nervous. I'd barely play for my siblings, and like my siblings are so close to me, and I was like, I don't want y'all to make fun of me. I'm doing my own thing. So fast forward a couple years, and I'm in Habersham County, Georgia. Has anybody ever heard of Habersham? Other than people like I'm in, yeah, y'all have. That's what I'm talking about. That's where I went to high school. That's where I graduated. And when I was in 8th grade, I think, I go to church one Wednesday night. We had a Wednesday night church, and I hadn't been going there long, and our youth pastor, Andy, comes up to me, and he's like, hey, I talked to your mom. You know how to play guitar. And I was like, yeah. He's like, cool. You're going to go to New Orleans with us, and you're going to lead worship for us. I was like, no, I'm not. And he's like, no, I already paid your way. You're going. You have to go. And I was like, okay. So if you don't have someone like Andy in your life pushing you, find an Andy in your life. So yeah, I go to New Orleans. We play in in front of a detention center. I'd never played anybody in front of other than my mom, and I've got these juvenile kids that want to kill me, which is I was like, God, where are we going with this? Because I don't know if I trust you. So coming through that, then I got asked to do the. Next I got to do the teens, their Wednesday nights. I got to lead that. It was really cool. Got to learn a ton, and then football started, and I was like, I got to choose one. I really felt God was like, you know which one you have to choose, and that was the worship part. And I was like, I can't quit football, but I did in the summer going in, and everyone hated me. It was like your typical movie scenario. I felt weird, but I was like, that's what God's telling me to do. Thankfully, I chose the one that worked out, because I'm not playing for the Bulldogs right now. Thank goodness. No. You never know. Not Alabama. No, MJ. No. So, let me get back on track here. So, I'm the youth worship pastor, and then we moved churches, and me and, at the time, remember the first time I went to a Sunday morning service there, this guy, all tatted up and, really cool hair, and I was like, I want to be his friend. I need to get him in my life. And lo and behold, he comes up to me and he's like, hey man, I heard you play guitar. Do you want to come play on Sunday mornings too? And I was like, so I was I was probably behind the stage with my little acoustic guitar at the time, just so nervous. But God was working. Fast forward and they had a team of 4. They had the worship pastor and then 4 worship leaders. And I was one of the 4 and got to lead, and it was awesome. Got to go on tons of mission trips, and it was awesome. So, not there yet. Sorry. Like I said, I got to get to the notes. So, that's the story of how I became a musician, I guess you could say. And God put me in that spot. And more of I want you guys to know who I am kind of thing, and where I came from. So you're not I wonder. I guess he was just born playing a guitar. It wasn't that way. So, let's move on. I'm going to get to the good stuff. So tonight I want to talk about worship, and I want to give you different perspectives about worship. So I had a realization a couple of years ago about worship, and I was thinking, and the church I used to be at, there was it was bigger, and the lights and stuff were going, and everyone was worrying about we have to get the lights and this and this and this going, and I was like, I wonder what they did in Jesus' time when they didn't have to worry about this stuff. You know what I mean? And then I started thinking even more. I was like, we have such a different grasp of worship than they did back then, and if you think about it, we have it a lot better. Skylar, name me a worship song. How long does that take? 5 seconds, right? Now, can you imagine if the disciples had that tool? And that's my mind. My mind goes in weird places when I start thinking about Jesus, because I'm like, what if they had iPhones back then, or what if they had Spotify or Apple Music? Can you imagine the stories we would read if then they went to the town and Jesus started playing Elevation? You know what I mean? It's funny, but the funny thing about it is we have it so good, and we don't realize it. Within seconds, I was able to stand here and play a recording of a song. But there's something of that I want you to think about. Of the stories in the Bible we hear about people worshiping, they didn't have an Elevation, they didn't have a Bethel or a Hillsong or Chris Tomlin or any of that. They just had Jesus. And before that, they just had God. So we have all this amazing tools and resources to us. And so I want to read a story, or a little snippet of a story real quick. Oh, I don't have to use this. Bobby, I gave you the stuff. Usually on Mondays I don't have that, so I'm just getting my phone out. Boom. I'm sure you've heard this story. I thought about going through the whole thing, but I'll tell you, I would vamp on it. I don't want to go forward. So, wearing a linen ephod? Anybody? Ephod? Cool. David was dancing before the Lord with all his might. Well, he and all Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sound of trumpets. So, David worshiped with loud trumpets, right? David danced with all of his might. Nowadays we have guitars, drums, bass, keys. We even, I don't know if you know this, but like there's a way to like, I could give Brandon a computer and like anybody know the song Oceans, the Hill You know there's like the wave sound and violins and pretty stuff. You can just plug in a laptop and play that and play with it. Who'd have thunk it, right? So we have all that, right? And David had some trumpets playing, and he was doing something to please the Lord. So what's our excuse? So I feel like as the church nowadays, we get so caught up in the stuff that really does not matter. The one thing that matters in worship is glorifying God and making sure he's the main focus and he's the main thing that's being talked about and thought upon. So, what's our excuse? This might come as a shocker to you. Get ready for this. Every time I'm coming here on a Sunday morning or like getting ready for Wednesday night, let me see how I put this because I put this bad earlier. I'm going to read this. There are times I come to church on a Sunday or Wednesday and I look at the stage and I'm like, I don't want to do that. Hadn't been a good week. I'm tired. I've got stuff I got to do at home. I've got family stuff going on. I've got this, and I have this, and I have that. And I'm sleepy, and I. And that's where I feel like we're missing it so much. It's not about I. The reason we worship, the reason God made this awesome way of communication, and like I said, even nowadays, it's even better than it used to be. Because we have lights and stuff to make us feel real good, which is cool, and it can get in trouble, like I said, but it's awesome. Worship isn't about I. Worship is about him, and that's it. So I'm going to ask you again, what's our excuse? What's our excuse to not worship him with everything we have? Because like I said, it took 5 seconds to pull up the elevation song, right? So if we're going through a hardship, we're going through something bad, God made stuff like that for the purpose of, well, instead of putting this on my shoulders and being like, no, I got this, God. I got this. And then like you're way down again, like, no. He's like, no. There's so many different ways for you to get rid of that. And you're like, no, it's cool. And you just keep getting weighed down. So what's our excuse? What's our excuse? And here's the thing. I'm talking about here. I'm talking about out there. I'm talking about at your home. I'm talking about everything. In all aspects of life, is there worship for you? What's stopping you from worshiping with all of your might? I think everyone has their own way of worshiping when it comes to music. You can worship through dance, like we just read. You can worship through tithing. There's so many ways to worship, but specifically talking about music, like everyone has their own thing, right? You get your hand raisers. There's a funny comedian, I can't remember who it is. He talks about like the different levels of hand raising. It's really funny. You've got those people. You know, you've got all so many different kinds, and I feel like once you see this is when like life change starts happening, right? Because when you see this, that's surrender, right? Somebody points a gun at you and your cop's like, freeze, what are you doing? Hands up, right? Surrender. But I feel like, I don't know, the American culture of church, I guess you could say, has built up this like resentment of like freedom. And that's not okay. Because this isn't make fun of me or like, what's this guy doing? You know what I mean? That's not what this is. This is life change. This is what God intended it for. God intended us to be right here crying. But he also intended us to get over that hill. Is Victoria here? I always ask her, dang it. Anybody know what the definition of insanity is? Same thing over and over, expecting a new result. We talked about that last night, kind of, but apparently you weren't listening. Busted. I'm gonna start making tests for y'all like the next Monday. Sorry. Let me tell you. I want the atmosphere of this place when you walk in to be just the most like freeing thing. And I want you to come in here and I want you to be able to worship and think, and not think about this, but think about this. There's an illustration of like how the church works and the cross like this. It's really cool. Look it up. I don't know it right now. I'm not going to butcher it. But in worship and community, I think that's a great thing, right? On Sunday mornings, what I'm talking about right now, the individual aspect of worship, this is all that matters. If that's getting on your knees and raising your hands and crying, that's your thing, okay? If it's raising your hands and singing out at the top of your lungs, do that. I don't want anyone to come in here and feel like they have this chain. Wait. Keep it on here. For a rainy day. You can either let your chains break your praise or your praise break your chains. I don't want people coming here with their chains and they're like trying to get it off, but like they look around and they see like, you know what I mean? And that's everywhere. Skylar is a perfect example. We always talk about it like, I don't keep using you, but like, I know I can pick on you and you're not going to be mad about it. So, well, good. I don't care. I'm just kidding. Talks about like, Skylar likes screamo music. I'm sure everyone in here loves screamo music, right? Well, Skylar listens to like Christian screamo music, which is, hey, it's your thing, cool. And then he also listens to like Elevation. And so when he's going down the road, like blaring Elevation and like, you know what I mean? Like, he's getting what the heck is wrong with this person? I want that, man. Like, I want people to look at me and be like, what is this freak doing? Like, is he praying over people? There was one time I took an internship in Orlando, Florida, and it was definitely a very spirit-led church. And I wasn't used to that, but I went here to experience that. And they did this thing like, hey, we're going to go in downtown Orlando, and you're going to bring your guitar, and you're going to play and sing. Hey, look, God's thrown me out in the middle of nowhere again with a guitar. But we're going to pray, and we want you to sing worship songs the whole time. And I was like, okay. And you get out there, and people are just like, what the heck? But then I realized the more I worried about this, the more like people weren't really getting prayed for, nothing was really happening. And once I lost myself in what God intended this to be, people getting prayed for, people, I mean, like it was crazy. There's like crowds of people were coming in. It was the coolest thing ever. Because this was happening and not this. So, let's move forward. We aren't worshiping each other. We're worshiping the one true God. I feel like sometimes, I think God makes things really cookie cutter. I have to have like, I've been to Africa, and I was like, I don't know God, I don't know. And he kept sending me sign after sign. I was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, maybe if you like give me a dream, I'll know. And I fell asleep, and like, I didn't know these two guys I knew were going, and I was walking down the street, and they were there. And I was like, okay, I guess that means I have to go. And then when I was in Africa, like, I saw the sign I saw in my dream, and those two dudes were standing here. Talk about, like, almost fall on your face and crying, and like I'm an idiot kind of moment. It was great. I don't know why I went on that little tangent, but. So, worshiping isn't just a Wednesday and Sunday thing. Moving on. Worshiping isn't just a Wednesday and Sunday kind of thing. It's an everyday kind of thing. If the pinnacle of your worship is here at church, you're missing it. Because that's not the way worship is. I'll show, dadgummit, I meant to get some buckets. I was going to have water all over the stage. I totally forgot. Dang. Anyway, whatever. Next time, yeah. On Sunday, there's going to be 2 big old bathtubs up here. I'll be ready. God doesn't call us to be worshipers 2 days a week. He calls us to be consistently worshiping. I usually give this illustration to the people that are wanting to get involved in our worship team, but I'm going to give it to y'all tonight so you get a little sneak peek of what goes on behind the scenes. I forgot. Maybe it was someone from Bethel. I can't remember. But they had 2 big old buckets, okay? One with water, one without water, and a sponge. I took a sponge, a dry sponge, pushed it in, went in the water, opened it up. What happens? Water, right? Picked it up, went to the empty bucket, squeezed it out, and then what's eventually going to happen? It's gone. As Christians, we're that sponge, okay? And we come to church and we listen to music and we sit there and squish it down and we get some Jesus and we let him just fill us up completely, right? We pick it up and then we go out into our jobs and we squeeze. We go out into our schools and we squeeze. We go to our families and we squeeze. We squeeze and we squeeze and we squeeze and nothing else is coming out. But then we just pick the sponge up, and if we don't go back to the water, the sponge is useless. You have to be filled up every single day. Worship is a continual thing. It's not a Wednesday thing. It's not just a Sunday thing. It's something that should happen every single day in our lives. Maybe you're saying, Kael, I try and be that sponge, but the more and more I squeeze, and I get in the water and I squeeze and I squeeze and I squeeze, it seems like when I pull up, it's still dry. Nothing's there. I try with God. I try real hard. I come and I worship and I do the things I'm supposed to, but it still doesn't feel right. So the more I try to worship, the emptier I feel, maybe. So we're going to read John 4:7-14. So when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." Jesus answered for her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you the living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw from. This well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, and also did his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks from this water will be thirsty again. Whatever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give you will become in them a spring of water, welling up to eternal life." Let's leave that up there, Bobby. What things in your life act like that well that Jesus was talking about? What are you worshiping that's taking the place of Jesus? Is it money? Is it some kind of fame or popularity or a girl, whatever that may be? What's taking up that spot that God's yearning for that worship to be happening with him? This tells us if you keep drinking from the well water, you're going to be thirsty. You're going to continue to be thirsty. Are you wondering why your sponge always, the more you squeeze in the water and you squeeze and you squeeze and you squeeze and you let go and nothing is happening? Have you ever wondered why it's not getting filled up? Which well are you in? You're in this worldly well where Jesus is saying, you're not going to, that right there, that's not going to help you. But if you drink from this water that I have, it's everlasting life. Are you sure you're drinking from the right water? I'm going to end by saying, reiterating some stuff. Worship is a daily thing. I'm going to kind of go back and contradict myself a little bit because I don't think I wrote this down right. And this is a Bethel thing, I was listening to. Do you know Bethel has like a school of music? It's like a credible thing. Like you can go in there, you can graduate from their school of music, and I can go to like Lee University and have like a really cool thing. I don't know. It's cool. I did it for a little while. Throughout the week, you're building yourself up in worship, and when you come through these doors is when it all explodes. Does that make sense? That's the vision I have, and I think that's the vision that God has with the idea of worship in church, especially nowadays, because, like I said earlier, if you think about it, we have a form of worship and a way of communication with God that they didn't have back in these days that we're talking about. Have you ever thought maybe we're like a chosen generation for that kind of stuff? I think God blesses us in a lot of ways that we don't take advantage of being like, wow, thank you so much for blessing us in that. Because something as simple as looking at my phone and asking him, hey, what's a worship song? Looking it up. That's special. And God has blessed us beyond measure with that. You can go on your phone and type in like church near me. And then there's like every denomination within like spitting distance. Are we taking advantage of the worship the way that God maybe has intended us to have it rather than like generations past? I'm going off the dome right now. My notes are done, so this could get weird. But it's okay. Give me a weird look if I'm like saying something weird. Worship to me is just such a special thing because I think Miss Rosa, she was telling me about this. I'm going to butcher it. I'm not even going to say it because it's awesome. If you find Rosa, go ask her what I'm talking about because I know, oh, she's right there. Hey, what were we talking about Sunday? Yes, that's it. Can you share that real quick? I know people online are probably like, what a jerk, we can't hear her. But
Just about talking about how even our age can affect the type of worship that we gravitate towards. Not just our ages, but our personal taste with instruments and whatnot.
mm,
John was making fun of me because how there are certain types of things that we like really, really loud and other things that we don't.
right, that's it.
How if I go to a marching band competition, I want my face to be peeled off.
Right.
I want it so loud.
Right.
But then there are other times when it's quiet and I might be listening to oceans or whatnot,
Mm.
but I know it's quieter and more subdued. It's really, really interesting.
Right. That was the part I couldn't remember, was we gravitate towards what we like. I think there are some times when I'm looking through my phone and I kind of like get called out because I'm like, I know y'all know what I'm talking about. You're like like when you're on your music on your phone and it's on shuffle and all your songs are playing, and you're like, oh, Elevation. Oh, Bethel. You know what I'm talking about. Are we continually seeking God through worship? And are we continually wanting to develop and have our relationship? That's one thing I keep challenging these guys with. Who does God say that he is to you? Because as parents, I think y'all do an amazing job. But you have to know God on a personal level. Because if I believe God is who John tells me God is, I'm never going to discover who God really is. Because that's who God is to John. There's just more, look, just letting God work and look what's happening. That's one thing I try to tell these guys. You have to be in your Bible. You have to be worshiping. It's not just something. It's something that you're going to be their age, y'all's age, and then I'm like, and I'm like not that much older than y'all, but I just can just see where like life is just going by like that. And I don't want to be like at the end of it and be like, oh crap, I could have done so much more. And I think that goes back to the well done, my good and faithful servant. That's one thing that like I hope that we all have on our minds is like, what am I doing to earn that from God? So, that's really the spiel I had. I had to ask John before we started, like, this is the first time I've ever been up here on Wednesday night. I'm always downstairs with them, so I have no idea what happens next. Communion happens next. Communion happens next. So let me pray for us, and then communion's right here. Awesome. Dearly Father, we thank you so much for tonight. Father, I pray that I made sense, and I pray that you just worked through all of these awesome people. Father, help us just to have new realizations of what you call us to be, and help us to understand the blessings that you have put in our lives, rather than just taking stuff for granted and, oh, that's just another part of my life. But maybe sit down and think, God, are you blessing me in this aspect? And I think in the form of worship and how easy it is to get there today, you are truly blessing each and every one of us, and maybe it's something that we're not really taking advantage of. So I pray that we'd have a new realization of just how special we have it, and that we would come on Sundays and Wednesdays and worship would mean something completely different than what it means to us now. That we wouldn't worry. We would just come in and we'd be worried about what you and I are doing, not what me and everyone else is, because we're worshiping you. We're not worshiping the people around us, because once we start focusing on how we're worshiping you, Jesus, there's this huge smile on your face, and just the idea of that's amazing. And I love it so much, and I pray that would be other people's mindsets when it comes to worshiping you, Father. And so I pray for communion tonight, and that we would take it and that we would view this as a form of worship as well. Father, you're so good and you're so great, and we love you so, so much. Amen.